If you read the book Moneyball or seen the Brad Pitt movie by the same name, you're familiar with SABR and sabermetrics. SABR is an acronym for the Society for American Baseball Research, and it is actually now based in Phoenix. And two of its officers are here to make a presentation, so please say hello to Executive Director Marc Appleman and Vince Gennaro, the President of SABR's Board of Directors.
How you doing? Good to see you, Vince. How are you? Okay, great.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Russomanno. As he said, SABR is based here in Phoenix. It's a 6,000-member nonprofit organization that's its goal is really deepening the understanding and appreciation of the great game of baseball for the public. And while many of you may think of SABR as being all about stats, which is true, we're also very much about preserving baseball history. And it's no secret that one of Bob's, or I should say Bob's deepest sports passion is in fact baseball. And in the spirit of preserving baseball history, in this case, Bob's personal baseball history, we've done some research, since we're researchers, and we've created a memento that will be one of the earliest, to capture one of the earliest memories of Bob attending his first baseball game at Yankee Stadium. We found out the date, we went and researched and got a copy of the box score of this game from the New York Times. We were able to find a photo of that era and assemble what we believe is a nice piece to hand to Bob to really thank him for all that he's done for the great game of baseball over the years, in addition to his contributions to, of course, to all other sports. So we'd like to present this to you, Bob.
Oh my God, that's the game. I think the score was 7-2. That's the game.
Notice we have a Roger Kahn quote. You may glory with Pete Franklin, but you're falling over the field of the
Oh, that's great. This is absolutely, and what else would you expect? These guys are researchers, and they're going to be precise. This is the first baseball game I ever attended at Yankee Stadium. I was 7 years old, September 26, 1959. And I said to Vince, as they handed this to me, I think the final score was 7-2. And here's the line score, 7-2. The game was tied. The game actually went extra innings. It went 11 innings, and Baltimore scored 5 in the top of the 11th and won 7-2. And I'm going to say, because I was heartbroken, that Mickey Mantle did not play that day. And I'm looking down, and who is in center field? Tony Kubek, who is usually the shortstop, and that's Tony right there. Tony played center field that day and went 1 for 4. Later, Tony Kubek, seen here with Casey Stengel, was my partner on the NBC Baseball Game of the Week in the 1980s. And there's a quote here: "You may glory in a team triumphant, but you fall in love with a team in defeat." That's from Roger Kahn, who wrote the classic baseball book, The Boys of Summer, about the Brooklyn Dodgers. As it happens, the Yankees of that era seldom lost, although that year, 1959, they didn't win the pennant. The White Sox did. But Kahn was referring to a team like the Brooklyn Dodgers, who came so close, so many years, and then finally won their one and only world championship in Brooklyn in 1955. And it was probably sweeter for those fans, just as it was for Red Sox fans when they finally broke through in 2004, and as it will be in some other millennium for Cubs fans when that eventually happens. And the last thing that I will say about this game, it was the first game that I ever went to. None of you here, maybe some of the professors or whatnot, but none of you remember the old Yankee Stadium, which disappeared, was remodeled in the 1970s, and now they've moved to a different site. But the old Yankee Stadium had a three-tiered, you can't see it in this picture, a three-tiered grandstand with the facade, which they kind of have paid homage to in the new Yankee Stadium. It's behind the center field seats, but it had this cathedral-like effect to it. And center field was 460 feet from home plate. And there were 3 monuments actually on the field. They're in Monument Park now behind the fence, but they were on the field with the flagpole behind them because nobody ever hit a ball that far anyway, so it would never get in the way. And the three monuments were to Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Miller Huggins, who was the manager of the Yankees in the 1920s. And at that time, you could leave the ballpark by way of the field when the game ended. They would open up the gates, and fans could actually walk around the warning track and all the way around this great, cavernous, awesome stadium and kind of take the scene in. So I'm walking around with my dad, and he's got me by the hand, and I'm looking in the dugout. Wow, Yogi Berra sat there. Whitey Ford sat there. And we get around to center field and the monuments. What else would a 7-year-old kid think except that they were buried there? Those are their tombstones. Babe Ruth is under the warning track. He's buried here. And this was the part that really got me. When Mickey Mantle dies, they're going to bury him there too. So I started to cry. And my father's trying to reassure me, no. They are dead, but they're buried someplace else. This is meant to honor them. And I'm convinced he's lying to me, so I'll stop crying. And I'm like, no, Joe DiMaggio is going to get buried there. Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford are going to get buried there. And then I'm starting to think, well, gee, and they bury Yogi, and eventually it's going to take up the whole ballpark. So, that was kind of the effect that baseball could have on a kid, especially in that era, because most of the games weren't on television, and those that were in black and white, and you listen to the games on the radio. And in fact, when I walked into the ballpark that day, it was like the scene in The Wizard of Oz when it switches from black and white, she gets to Oz, and now it's in Technicolor. Everything just kind of burst out at you. You walked up the tunnel, and everything that was in flickering and staticky black and white, like on one of those small TVs in there in the museum, all of a sudden it was a burst of color. The grass was so green, and the baselines were like pure white, and the warning track had an orangish almost glow to it. It was just the most arresting thing. It was bigger. It felt far more like a religious experience than going to church, because church was boring, but this was exciting, And I worshipped at the Church of Baseball, and something that I really, the only bad thing about the experience, we're walking around the warning track, and we get to the 407 sign in right center field in front of the bleachers, and on television that just looked pure and pristine white, 407. But I guess some of the people who, on their way out, thought it would be a good idea to write like Sally loves Bill, and with a heart or whatever, and kind of leave their little notation. And to me, this was like a criminal offense. Why would you desecrate Yankee Stadium this way? And I felt a visceral resentment at age 7 toward anybody who didn't properly genuflect in the way that I would. But that's one example. I don't know that any 7-year-olds view sports quite that way now, because the world was different then. But this is a reminder of that world. This really is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you very much. This is great.